Hello, it's me, Mike, with HPDS. This will be a study in Genesis 6. So before I get started, I'll go ahead and do the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Please give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our debt as we forgive those in debt to us. And Lord, lead us not into temptation, but rather deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom of power and glory, Lord, forever and ever. Amen. So, I'll go ahead and get started reading Genesis 6. And hopefully I don't have too many distractions in this video. So let me go ahead and take a look at what I got here. All right, Genesis 6. Before I go over Genesis 6, we're basically going to be seeing, let me see the little, says the wickedness of the world. We're going to see that Noah finds grace in God's eyes. We're going to see the building of the ark. That's what we're going to see in Genesis 6, ultimately. So let me read it. Hold on, make sure I get this going right. Okay. So here it is. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. And they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And he repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, and perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make of it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven. And everything that is in the earth shall die. But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. All right, that's Genesis 6. So that's Genesis 6, and like I said, let's go ahead and once again, what do we got here? We got the wickedness of the world. We see the wickedness of the world. We see that Noah finds grace in God's eyes, and we start the building of the ark, right? So, yeah, let's see how wicked was the world. Let me go ahead and get this going. How wicked was the world? So let's see, verses 1 through about 12. 1 through 12. Basically, if you see 1, man began to multiply. There they are. Man began to multiply on the face of the earth. They're coming all over the place. Adam and Eve were having a bunch of children. And they were themselves having their own children, and they were all living long time. Many of them were living long years. Not all of them. Many of them. And then here we got daughters. The sons of God saw the daughters of men. So now we've got these sons of God seeing the daughters of men, and they took them. And so what is this? So here we go into more what people call occult knowledge, or whatever they want to call it. Occult knowledge just for the sake of making cults out of it. But that is not the case. Now you recognize, if you go through and you watch the videos that I have on the previous, 4 and 5 and so forth, you realize that these sons of gods were they very well, many of them could be this line of Cain. These people, you could call them people, but you could also probably rightfully call them creatures. These people, these creatures that, they had some magical powers. They were very close to God. They were corrupt creatures that still had knowledge and power of what was going on previous, but they very well could have been these creatures, and they called themselves the sons of God, and there they are, multiplying with the men of the daughters of men. So you've got this weird corruption where they're calling they were inhabiting the humans. Not only were they inhabiting the humans, but they were making the humans multiply, and they were causing these daughters. They were taking. And so God is seeing this, and God sees this, and there's something clearly wrong with whatever is going on here. And that's why God says, "My spirit shall not always strive with them, for he's just flesh. His days shall be 120 years." And that's what he was saying. They're just gonna limit them to 120 years old. They're not gonna be any older than that. Watch. That's what God's saying. And because clearly what they're doing over here is wrong and wicked. And then you get, this is another infamous verse. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. So these guys were giants. They were giants, and some people corrupt this to say figurative giants. They were just men that were well known and so forth. But no, they were real giants. There was something corrupt. They were getting very big. You could go through old news articles and find the size of these guys, and even Nimrod himself. They've got a stela that they found out there. The Nimrod stela. Let's take a look. In fact, since I got the internet. The treasure of Nimrod stela. Let's see if we could find it. The images of this guy. He was supposed to see. He's already there. Already show you can see giant things. Look at. Here's another corruption of a camel man, Nimrod. See how I was making mention in the last video how they were they were creating different bodies, but that's not what I'm looking for. There's a statue of Nimrod, a stela. Let's see, Nimrod's or is it not Nimrod? It could have been I don't know what they call them. Treasure. I think this is the one I'm looking of. No, this ain't quite the one. Oh, but here's more stelas about these corruptions of bodies. But here's one. No, that's not. Well, I don't know. The Treasure of Nimrod, Stella. Treasure of Nimrod. I'm probably wasting time. Stella. Because I can't remember what it was called, and I think it was a name of a particular guy. But, and he's carrying like a tiger or something. And this it's supposed to be showing how big he was. He was a giant. Of course, when I'm looking for giants, I can't find the giant information. That's how it was. How secretive these giants like to be. I can't even speak about them. I can't ever show them. I can't find the information. When I need to find the information, I find it only when I'm slowly taking my time and not really. But anyway, that's what I'll get into. I always gotta make a video, and I'll do that. I guess I'll do that on my other channel where I take the time to talk about giants and how giants are being held and how there's a huge conspiracy and they've destroyed a lot of the bones of the giants. So that's something that the giants have to contend with in their own curse, and that comes from the line of Cain as well. Then here it is. They're calling themselves the sons of God at this point. So these sons of God is probably just another reference to the fact that this line of Cain was basically like a spiritual creature. He was a spiritual man. He was one of those men of light. He was an angel. That's why even called Satan, the accuser, is called an angel. No wonder he's a beautiful being of light is what he was. Is what that's what he is, and that's what Cain was. That's why they're getting around to what Cain was. And so they were able to inhabit the bodies of men, and they were clearly able to do something. And once again, getting back into that transhumanism stuff, they were messing with the human body, doing what ought not be done, and only God should have had that power. But here they were completely altering humans and flesh in general. They were really getting corrupt. They were messing with flesh. Just like like I said, transhumanism would be what it is today. People modifying their bodies, people splitting their tongues, people putting things in their skins, so forth. And it even comes from just tattoos in general. Started is where it goes, where it starts. They're just altering the body. But let's see. So these were the giants. They were somehow, these people from the line of Cain were mixing in with the line of Seth, and yeah, I was living with the line of Seth over there. And what's going on here? Giants. They were making giants, and they were the mighty men of renown. The mighty men. And so this is also the mighty men later on after when we get into Genesis 10, we see that they're going to come right back around. So, but what's going on here is that God is destroying all the flesh. That's what he's saying. I'm getting rid of the flesh. All this flesh is going away. The only flesh that's going to be saved is Noah. So he's making a big statement to the line of Cain right now. In fact, this is, like I said, he's giving his revenge. He's avenging the death of Abel, because Abel, if Cain is a creature of light, is one of the light, is then so was Abel, and Abel is spiritually dead. Abel is gone. He's not bringing Abel back. Abel is done for. There's no redemption for Abel. The redemption was for man. And Abel never got to inhabit, a man or whatever. Didn't do it. It was something that they weren't supposed to do. And so Abel is dead. He's gone. That's why it's such a sad sacrifice. That's the real loss here, was the loss of Abel. And he was a good one. So Seth, when he comes around, is a fleshly person, whereas Cain was more than likely, yeah, he's physical, but we call him flesh, but he was made of the dirt, and so he's some sort of dirt, but he's quite possibly not the same flesh that we see before us now. Obviously, that's what it's getting at. And they altered bodies. So there he was. Let's see, right? That's what he's saying. So God is telling these line of Cain people, these people that were these creatures of light, that were just like Cain, that had his same curse, that were from his line. They're over here rebelling against God, doing what ought not to be done. That's what they're doing. They're going down there, they're intermixing. Of course, this isn't necessarily something that has been placed out there, but God does put the law later on when he's talking to the people of Israel, when he's talking to them out in the Exodus, when they're out in the desert and he's giving them their laws. I mean, he basically tells them, when we go in to invade, you better not, don't intermarry with those people. Don't mix with these people. Don't mix your bloodlines. They're wicked. Don't do it. Just don't do it. And of course, some people might call that nowadays, that's not politically correct because it stinks of racism or whatever. But that's not what it is. What it is these people come from a magical race of people that are made out of light, that can make themselves look like humans. And more than that, they can have huge effects on humans. And more than that, they live a long time, but they can inhabit bodies of flesh as well for upwards of 120 years at a time. And we do learn later on, if we do, let me go ahead and do what I do. Bible verse, when an evil spirit leaves the body, it cannot. Well, let's see. Yeah, let's see what happens to an evil. I forget. When an unclean spirit comes out of a man, here we are talking about these spirits. These are the spirits, the very same spirits that come from this line of Cain that I'm talking about. We're going to go to King James. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places seeking rest, and findeth none. So that's when it goes out, he walks through the dry places seeking rest, but it can't find nothing. So that's what happens. When an evil spirit leaves a person, it goes into the desert seeking rest, but finding none. The NIV, when an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. The ESV, when the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places seeking rest, but finds none. When an unclean spirit passes through arid sea, there you go, through waterless places, waterless, through dry places. He walked through dry places. Unclean, it roams through the. See, that's what it's getting at. When an evil spirit goes out of a person, it travels over dry country looking for a place to rest. And if it can't find one, it comes back with 7 stronger. That's what the next line is. But yeah, that's what I'm getting into. These are the lines of Cain. That whatever they are, that evil spirit is from the line of Cain. And that line of Cain were somehow able to inhabit human bodies. And more than that, they were able to convince them to do all kinds of wicked and horrible and nasty things. But that's why God is seeing these perverted line of Cains really, really do a number on the line of Seth. And so God tells them, look, all the flesh, it's been living for hundreds of years, 900 years, 800, 700 years. They're all living long times in this flesh. This flesh is no longer some, and that's what it says. Later on, it tells us when we learn more, if they're not in the flesh, they can't find rest. And they're uncomfortable. They're in that dry, they're in the desert. It's something wrong. They don't like to be out of a body, because when they're out of the body, there's it's uncomfortable for these people, for this line of Cain people. So that's what's going on here. It's uncomfortable for them when they're not inside of a host. And that's why it was something for them to sacrifice. That's why when it came to Cain and Abel, when they sacrificed, Cain was sacrificing plants. Once again, a cursed item. They couldn't even live inside of the corn. Or they couldn't even live inside of the crops or whatever crops he was giving out to God. But meanwhile, Abel was sacrificing the flock. He was sacrificing hosts, animals. That was a real thing, because he was obviously somehow inhabiting these creatures, probably these hosts, and I can't live in these things anymore. So I give them to God. They're gone. I sacrificed them. That was a sacrifice. It's a real sacrifice to a different type of creature, a different type of man, a man that's able to inhabit hosts, and that's what Abel was kind of doing, just like Cain does. Um, and of course, this is that's just how it reads. Something's going on. That's just a concept, and I'm not saying that's exactly how it is, but clearly, if these evil spirits, we usually can't see them. They just somehow come in and out of the body. They manifest as actions and thoughts and words. They manifest as but lots of times if you come across people that do have demons, and if you've seen demons, these demons take on alternate personalities sometimes, and that same demon is, for example, the demon that goes out to and goes out to public and has a job, and is a respected member of the community, but then he goes home and he's doing horrible things, or he's kidnapping people, he's murdering people, keeping them locked up in a basement, stuff like that. That's the concept of a demon right there. And that demon, not only it's not always just the flesh, which lots of times it is just that flesh, because the flesh is always just thinking of bad things, but it was also quite possibly these people that were considering themselves the sons of God, and they were really just the line of Cain, but they were a different kind of man. And they weren't quite the same man that we would think of. They were, they were these kinds of unclean spirit men. And they were able to mess with our thoughts and mess with our actions. And if we're not close to God, if we're not keeping our relation, and we're not letting Jesus Christ into our spirit, into our hearts, we have to let Jesus Christ do the inhabitation now. Now we understand that that's clearly what Jesus Christ is. He when he was resurrected, he's coming back in that new body, and that new body is clearly stronger than the line of Cain body. But until Jesus Christ came in his resurrected body, the line of Cain body was clearly the strongest body out there. It could do whatever it wanted. It could jump from human to human. It could habit different people at once, maybe more than one at one time. And that was very well the case when you come to cults, and that's why they have so much mind control. In the deepest, darkest realms, you'll have cults that are many people trying to be one person, many people acting as one and considering themselves greater than the population, because they can act as one person. Many people can act as one person, and those are real cults out there. Real groups of people out there affecting the world in this very day and age. You even saw a movie about it called Get Out. But again, that's something I'll talk about in Signs of the Times, where in a different station where I go through all kinds of signs of the times, where I could show you. I show movie. I'll point out movies. I'll talk about movies. Talk about TV. Talk about news, and all that. But right here, this is just a Bible study. But that's what's going on here, is that God decides, I'm going to punish you guys in particular, and I'm going to destroy all this flesh that was able to live for hundreds of years. Now I'm going to limit it to 120 years. I'm going to get rid of everything that's already there. And the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this guy Noah right here. Because the wickedness, that's how bad every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So basically, line of Cain had won out. They were out running amok. Like I said, they were just doing what they wanted. And not only that, but so was all the people of line of Seth for the most part. For the most part, the line of Seth was just bad too. And God was repented, and it repented the Lord. What is that? Genesis 6:6. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull out this other New Living Translation again, 6:6. I want to see how it reads around this area. And it repented the Lord that he had made God. Because that repented the Lord is kind of a strange, that the Lord himself is repentive. That's how it hurt. This was not something that he desired. It was something that he was watching, and it was just getting bad. Even for God, that's how painful it was for him to watch this. But let's see, 6:6. So the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. And the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. Yep, that's what he was doing. It grieved his heart. I'm going to read this ESV, the English Standard Version, the same one. Genesis 6:6. And we're 6:6 here. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I've created from the face of the land, man and animals. That's 6 and 7. So then I also got this NIV. Let me take this NIV copy and see what they got to say. See what Zandervan has to say. 6:6. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So you see, so everyone conveys the same thing. God did not like watching this. It was not something that pleased him. It was very upsetting. These people were doing horrible things. So God said, I gotta go ahead and kill them all. They all gotta be destroyed. They've all declared war on me. They're all against me. So, and it's sad, that's what a king does. A king defeats his enemies. That's just what a king does. That's what the Lord is telling us. It's the hard lesson that he's teaching. A true Lord, a true king destroys his enemies. All of them. He has no enemies because they are all destroyed. That is what the true king does. And everybody else is his people. And but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So here we are finding out that these are the generations of Noah. That Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with God. So let's see, getting into this. Basically, that's another thing right there. That he was perfect in his generations. So people have also made that he was perfect in his generations, meaning he was a just man. So he was a good guy. He was living according to God. Noah walked with God, and that's where we see that, where Noah walked with God. Well, what does that even mean? Well, there's still that hidden man that we saw in Genesis 2. Right? There he was. There's Genesis 2, man. He's walking around still. And in this moment, Cain and Abel, or Cain, not Abel, but Cain and the people from Cain are kind of similar to him, at least in the way they look. They kind of look the same way. Not that, they still do, but they probably did at the time. And they were, as they were falling and sinning and more sinning, that's all they were really doing. They were getting further and further away from the look that this man looked. But this God, Noah walked with him. So it says Noah walked with this man, that hidden man from Genesis 2. He was some sort of light creature, more than likely. He could look like light. He could look like a man. Maybe, it's just what he was. He was something that was clearly not like this, but he was what Jesus Christ would be when he was like transfigured after the fact, after he was resurrected. Or, well, not after he was resurrected, but something like that. But Noah actually walked with him, and he was also perfect in his generation. So let's go back to that NLT, that New Living Translation, and take out 6:9. See what it says, because what he's talking about is basically his bloodline. His bloodline is what he's talking about. He was perfect in his bloodline. 6:9. Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. Oh, but this one doesn't even say anything about the bloodline. Perfect in his generations. And then let's see ESV. Let's see what the ESV reads. 6:9. 6:9. Moses. Oh, no, this is Exodus. I'm in Exodus. I need Genesis. Genesis 6:9. 6:9. These are the generations of Noah. It just says the same thing. These are the generations of Noah. Noah's a righteous man. Actually, I think I skipped that line then. That's what I did. These are the generations. How did I skip it in this NLT version? 6:9. This is the account of Noah and his family. So instead of the generations, this is the account. And he was perfect. And it goes into that. So I guess it does. And the NIV, let's see what the NIV reads. 6:9. This is the account of Noah. He was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked with God. So that's all they say about that one. But perfect in his generations. Let's go ahead and take a look at when we get into this one. The Hebrews. We'll get into the interlinear Genesis. What are we taking a look at? We're looking at 6:9, right? So let's go ahead and change this up to read 6:9. Blameless. Now these are the generations. And so you got the generations, some weird T-O-dat, Toldot. And then over here you've got Bedrotov in his generations, the generations, in his generations. So let's take a look at this one. What does this read? Genesis is the generations are the records of. These are records of. So he was perfect in the records of his generations. So not just see the records, this is genealogy. That's why it's using genealogy. But let's go ahead and see. Let's go back and let's take a look at this other one, Bedrotov. In his time, in his generations, his time. So it's really, it's talking about sections of time and not just necessarily the account. These are the account, the generations throughout their generations, your generations. And what it's really kind of signifying is it's getting towards the bloodline. He was perfect in his bloodline. He wasn't distorted with this line of Cain over here. And because he wasn't distorted with this line of Cain, he was the only good guy in the whole world at the time. He was the only guy. You know what I mean? Obviously, and it says it was the only one, Noah himself. But Noah had 3 sons. And so that's why it said earlier that there were giants in those days and also after that. Now it's saying that what's his name, however, was blameless in his time, so 9, and he had 3 children, so he wasn't corrupted, is what was happening with Noah, and he was the only guy in the world. That's what it says. Some of these other ones say he was the only good guy in his generations. Like I said, this NLT goes pretty extreme in this case, in my opinion. But hey, that's the way it's sounding like. Let's go Genesis 6:9 again. In this NLT, what's he saying? The only blameless person living on earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. Noah was the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So now you get to understand it. Well, that just called him the only blameless person. It didn't say that Shem, Ham, and Japheth were blameless. It said that only Noah was blameless. Noah was a just man and perfect in his, and Noah walked with God. You see what I'm getting at? That doesn't mean that Shem, Ham, and Japheth were uncorruptible from the line of Cain. But the line of Cain had not corrupted Noah. So Noah was perfect and blameless. And he walked with God. He saw God, just like Abraham does later. But it doesn't say anything about Shem, Ham, and Japheth doing the same. And in fact, since we now recognize that these giants are the product of these line of Cain people, inhabiting the human bodies and doing things with the human bodies, we realize that they have to inhabit bodies in order to do things. And God's about to come up with a plan to destroy all the bodies in the world. And so now all of the line of Cain was going to be without flesh for a really long time. And what is it? What did we find out earlier? That it's uncomfortable when they don't have any flesh. So when God destroys all of the creatures in the world, I mean, this is making a huge statement to the line of Cain, and basically the line of Cain is uncomfortable. They're gonna be uncomfortable because they're not gonna be in flesh, and what little flesh they got to live through, it had to die, and it died, and then after it died, they probably were fled. They were probably the spirit creatures flying around with no body, and then how long did it take for the earth to be inhabited? But how long did it take for some of them stronger demons that I would call now a demon, but you could call them the line of Cain? They after the flood, right away started going into all the humans as much as possible through Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and of course the line of gems. We start seeing in Ham in Genesis 10. Well, later on in Genesis 8, we'll see how there's a curse and there's something that happens and there's a slight perversion going on, and and we obviously see how that little perversion in that one person opens up the realm for these line of Cain people that had nowhere to go after the flood. It was really tough for them after this flood, and then they had to compete with whoever was going to get the early say in the bodies, because Noah was perfect, so it was going to take a while to corrupt them. But they worked their way through Ham, and then it tells us later that the mighty men come back. So it takes a while, but they come back, and then we find out, obviously, that man said, but they started living only to 120 years old. God made it so, and that comes up later. But coming up in Genesis 6 still, though, it's still talking about that's what's going on. It's just picking out Noah, talking about him, and God also sees that, the earth was also corrupt. And that's another thing, that the earth was filled with violence. So the earth was the dirt, and the dirt was cursed because of because of Adam, obviously. And then also the dirt, just the whole world was filled with violence, and even the earth was filled with violence. And that's why even the earth has to be sanctified, and there's holy spots. There's places that are holy, there's places that are probably wicked out there too, and there's places that where you go, the earth itself is just violent. So anything that goes on there, that portion of the earth, humans, birds, animals, creatures, even the vegetation is somewhat violent too. Everything there is violent, and that's places you'll come across. Um, but that was what God was seeing, that by this point in time, things were just out of hand. It was bad. It was corrupt, and everything was corrupt upon the earth. And so that's why God gives Noah the plan. And Noah, he tells him, hey, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So he said, I'm going to destroy everything. So go ahead and make the arks. That's why he makes the ark, the pitch and without pitch. So this is basically, he's going to waterproof it. And I'm going to tell you how big to make it. And then he's got the cubits, and the cubits is like I said, I've heard it called the cubits is from here to here. So it's particular because there were giants in those days. So for the giants, I mean, their cubits were a lot bigger. So that's why it makes mention of the giants, and that's why it makes mention of the cubits, and it's to show how big. And this is to understand that God that we did find the ark, the Noah's ark. It has been found, and they do not see it. So it's around 450 feet long, which makes Noah. You can basically determine the size of Noah's arm, and it's basically the size of a normal guy. His normal, it wasn't too big, but it's showing that to prove what is the real human, because Like I said, there were giants. And so some of these giants, when they come back to life, when they present their case before God, they're gonna try to say that they were the real humans and their way was right and so forth, and they're gonna try to go against Jesus Christ, and they're gonna say that Jesus Christ wasn't the real line. There's blah blah blah. There's a lot of things like that out there. They're gonna go through the Muslims, all kinds of things. Um, but in reality, the case is you'll find that he was basically a normal sized man. He wasn't one of the giants. That's what it means to be perfect in his generations. That's what it means. He was perfect from the line of Seth, not from the line of Cain, from the line of Seth, because the line of Cain could very well have been a crazy race of people that made giants that were magical, mythical creatures. They were these creatures that made those crossbreeds between the hybrids between animals and men. And it's very perverted later on, what you see in some of these old timey statues and old timey art and everything. Some of it's very perverted, just sexually perverted, just diabolical in nature, just wicked. But he's telling Noah, you know what, I'm going to destroy all of that, in particular because they're hosts, and it's really going to do a number on that line of Cain, and a lot of them are probably going to die spiritually during that whole ordeal. But with thee will I establish my covenant. So with Noah, though, that's what he's saying, I'm making my covenant, and you're going to have proof later on with the ark. So take your sons, take your wife, take your sons' wives with you, and then here's another thing that people don't understand. He takes two of every living thing of all flesh. He takes everything, and they come into him. But he's talking about just the. You'll notice that he tells of the fowls, of the cattle, and all the creeping thing, but he doesn't mention anything about the fish. So it's just the land animals and all the birds, and and he takes quite a bit of them. Take thou unto thee of all the food, and he'd take a bunch of food for them. And so God, and he did that as a supernatural way of doing it, because that's a lot of animals, and chance, and so it's a wonder how he did that, but it is something that happened, and we gotta understand it for what it is. He basically took a zoo with him, and when I think about a zoo, theoretically, I mean, I could probably gather, even though a zoo, lots of times the zoos that I've been to, they cover a lot of ground. They're pretty big, but I mean, if you think about all the animals that are held within the zoos, they can easily be put together in a small confined space, no problem. And the size of that ark, basically the size of a kind of a small building, or a pretty big building actually. Um, it could have easily housed a whole bunch of creatures. I mean, a whole bunch of them. And especially when he's only talking about 2 or 7 of each kind. And that's what he says, 2 of every sort right here. But later on, he does say take 7 in Genesis 7, and I'll go over Genesis 7 in a different video. But he's also taking all the food, so he takes a lot of food too. He getting all this ready. And remember, it said at the end of chapter, let's see, it doesn't say his age here, but it does say that at the end of Genesis 5, when we get into Noah, it talks about he was 590 and 5 years. No, that's Lamech. And Noah was 500 years old. So they're talking about at the end of Genesis 5, Noah's 500 years old. So Noah's 6 year over here talking about, oh, here he is talking about do all this stuff, because this is what I'm going to do. The whole world is bad. I'm going to kill all the flesh. It's really going to do a number on the line of Cain. And then and you need to get this ark, and you need to put all the animals in the ark. And then you need to do that because I'm going to kill all the flesh, and take some food with you while you're at it. And so that's what Noah did. And so when we get into Noah Genesis 7, we find out how old he was. Let's see. Noah was 600 years old. So he went from 500 to 600. So it took about 100 years that he had that chance. About 100 years or so to build that ark and to get everything ready for what was going to happen. But that is I'm gonna go ahead and that's Genesis 6. I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. Uh, yeah, we learned quite a bit. Genesis 6 is another important one. There's the line of Cain messing around, making giants, which is again still part of that transhumanism. It really explains why your serpent starts off in Genesis. By the time of Job, he's a big dinosaur looking guy. And by the end of Revelation, he's a great beast with 7 heads and 10 horns and a dead, he brings his dead head back to life, so forth. He's really altering his body. He's really manipulating what God is, and that's what's going on here. That's starting. You can see it already, even in Genesis 6. You're seeing it, and there's a reason why Noah was perfect in his generations, and there's a reason why God was just killing all the flesh. There was a reason why He was limiting it to 120 years old. And he was getting rid of these evil people that were already calling themselves sons of God. They were calling themselves sons of God because they saw how much more of an advantage they had over the little human beings. And that's what they were. That's what they were doing. They were already calling themselves sons of God because they saw the great advantage that they had over the human flesh, and they were really making the human flesh do some wicked, evil things. And they were really tempting God, tempting the Lord. They're just being bad, and that's what was going on in Genesis 6. So God's saying, hey, guess what? I'm going to bring a flood of waters, and we'll see that happen in Genesis 7. So I'll go ahead and end here now and say God bless you to anyone who might be watching, and say I pray we all bless Jesus Christ, and may Jesus Christ bless all of us. Amen.